These are things that we absolutely can do, and it's not a challenging idea, it's just a challenging impediment. A person like Amadei doing what he does because it's in his financial and political best interest. Remove those impediments and we can fix these problems. We know how. Thank you.
Rick Shepard is a father, a husband, a business owner, and he is running for Congress in Nevada's 2nd District. His motivation is partially from his major displeasure with Mark Amadei, the current incumbent, but his dedication as an activist is what drives him to seek the Democratic nomination for the seat. Shepard has been an activist for over a decade and has been involved with movements before, including going to New York to occupy Wall Street. His first and most profound act to improve society happened in Reno, Nevada, and arose under bizarre circumstances.
August 17th, 2005, some unknown individual to this day walks into Sack and Save and attempts to shoplift D-cell batteries and infant formula. On his way out, he's intercepted by loss prevention, and a fight breaks out, and they beat him up. In the words of the loss prevention person that I spoke with, he received what they called a tune-up. So they tuned him up. Sergeant Dye from the Reno Police Department arrived on scene, frisked the man, and found him to be in possession of heroin paraphernalia. He didn't have any ID on him, so Sergeant Dye asked the man to identify himself, and when he did, he gave my name, my date of birth, and my social security number.
Sergeant Dye proceeded to record this petty thief and drug user as Rick Shepard. The man was then transported to Washoe Medical Center, now Renown Hospital, to receive treatment. Once they arrived, the man was forced to sign a document promising to appear in court. He was then handed off as Rick Shepard to the medical center.
He's released the next day and, again, has never been seen. My court date comes and goes, and of course he doesn't show, and as soon as that happens, there's a warrant for my arrest that is issued. And at this point, I'm a wanted man, and I have no idea. It's amazing that for a year and a half, I'm roaming this community a wanted man. I'm a fugitive from justice. I have no idea. There's a cell phone in my pocket. I own a home. I own a business. I literally live 2 doors down from a Reno police officer. I spend time in his garage, helped him hang a heavy bag. We'd hang out in the backyard and drink beers. I am no more hiding than you or anybody else. I'm wanted, and no one makes any effort to reach out to me. No phone calls, no emails, no cars pull up.
So you're probably asking, how exactly does an oblivious fugitive become aware of his wanted status?
I'm just living my life unaware that I'm wanted, and I'm driving down Virginia Street, and Officer Massey of the Reno Police Department is operating a speed trap. And I'm driving above the posted limit. He pulls me over, and I'm now a wanted man in a custodial stop. And although I'm cited for speed, I'm just released. So I still have no idea that I'm a wanted man. Now, apparently neither does Massey. As soon as I pay that bill, as soon as I pay the speeding ticket, I show up on databases. I start getting notices from Washoe Medical Center for services I didn't receive, and I receive a summons to appear in court for crimes I didn't commit.
Confused and frantic, he called the Reno Police Department, but could do nothing more than defend his innocence by saying, "It wasn't me." The police told Shepard to come by the courthouse so they could figure out a solution.
I show up at the courthouse, and Sergeant Dye in plain clothes comes up, looks me up and down, says, "That's not him." Disappears into this small room with a couple of lawyers for a couple minutes, and then he comes out and says, "You're free to go." And I'm thinking, okay, done. The case, it's solved, it's over. Wash your hands of it, I'm fine. And as a conciliatory gesture, I assume, he says, "Why don't you come along on a ride-along?" And it seemed like a good idea. When I was 5 years old, my mother went through the police academy. The first weapon I ever fired was her .357 service revolver, and at 5 years of age, I could neither hold it nor pull the trigger without her aid. I grew up thinking that cops were supposed to be our friends, heroes, champions. They were supposed to be pillars of the community, model citizens. What I didn't want was somebody hiding under an overpass and harvesting wallets. So I needed some perspective shift, and I wanted to have a better relationship with these people that are supposed to be our heroes. And so I agreed, yeah, let's go on this ride along. Let me see if I can reset my opinions.
Despite Shepard's openness to change his opinion on the behavior of cops, it became impossible for him to ignore their lack of duty.
A couple days later, I go on this ride along with another officer who's not a motorcycle cop. We're in a car, and we're traveling up 395. And I gesture off to the left. I'm like, hey, over there is the Skyline Mobile Home Park where I grew up, and over here on the right is the Rayleigh's in Golden Valley where I got my first job, pushing carts and bagging groceries, $3.35 an hour. So while we're having this conversation, I said, hey, about the speeding ticket. I was wanted at this time, right? Why wasn't I arrested? And without missing a beat, this sworn officer on duty in uniform behind the wheel of his patrol car turns to me and says, oh, they don't look. If they get a hit, it can be an hour for a car to show up. And I'm immediately furious and devastated, but what are you going to do, right? I'm clearly I'm not going to do anything now. I'm already in the patrol car. But I'm at a loss because this isn't what I'm expecting. They're not living up to this ideal. They're living down to a stereotype. We all know that speed traps do nothing to benefit us as people. They don't make traffic move more smoothly. They don't make us safer. But they do a wonderful job of oppressing us, which is an agenda. And they do a fantastic job of generating revenue for the state. And so that's why they exist. But if you're like me, you held out this modicum of hope that every once in a while during a traffic stop, they might also actually get a real bad guy. But now I am and have been confirmed proof that they actively avoid this because it's an impediment to their profit seeking. And now I have contempt for these people that I want to love. And that's hard to rationalize. It's hard to get your head around, right?
With his biggest fears further confirmed, Shepard was compelled to do something no matter how minuscule the impact was.
So, what are you going to do? I'm just one guy. So I started protesting. I didn't seek any groups or organizations. No one taught me how to protest. I'm sure I made plenty of mistakes along the way, but I knew that I couldn't deal with this and by just ignoring it. I couldn't let it go. I knew this was happening, and I couldn't just sit silently by. So I got these laminated signs made up, attention, speed trap ahead. And as an IT guy, I was constantly driving around our community, going from person to person and business to business, helping them and what have you. And so between my stops, between my jobs, I would be traveling through areas that I knew had speed traps. When I would see an officer engaged in one of those, I'd get out of my car and I'd go upstream and I'd hold the sign and warn my fellow motorists to slow down. And it worked. I mean, of course, it only worked for the while I was there and for that one particular of the many speed traps that are going on. So I'm just one drop in a bucket. I know I'm not making a dent in the overall problem, but I'm still doing all I can as a single person. And people were very receptive to it. They slowed down, they recognized, they honked, they waved, they smiled. A couple people threw a few bucks at me, and it was much appreciated. And the cops would eventually figure out that something was amiss because they would see that traffic was slowed down before them. And they'd drive up, they'd see me, they stopped, they talked to me, they photographed me. They knew who I was, they knew what I was doing, they knew I was there. And they even made efforts to try to legislate me out of being able to do this. But of course, I'm gathering peacefully and have some rights that supersede their desires.
As if Shepard hadn't made it clear he was going to be heard, he continued to show his displeasure in a variety of ways.
I did this for years. And after a few years, I heard the Supreme Court upheld that flipping off cops was free speech. And so now I had a new arrow in my quiver, and so I started doing that instead. And again, I wasn't, not all the cops, not all the time, it was just the ones in the speed traps, because I knew that they were the ones that were living down to this stereotype. Anyone that was elsewhere doing other things, and Godspeed. You're doing what you signed up to do. You're being that hero that we've come to expect. But when I know that you're just harvesting wallets and you're not even looking for true offenders, bad guys, risks to our society, and I'm like, all right, I have a gesture for you. So after a few years of doing that, they didn't care for that much. There was plenty of times where I was followed by cops, or they'd follow me all the way home, all the way onto private property, and they were menacing. But, of course, they couldn't do anything about it, and so long as I had the cruise control locked at the posted, there was nothing they could do. I got really good at locking the cruise control at the posted speed limit. One day, I'm driving home, and one of Nevada's finest decides to engage me on the intersection of Sparks Boulevard and Bering Boulevard. And there's a Sparks police surveillance vehicle that's recording this whole thing, so I know this is an event. And it's not Sparks PD that's engaging me. It's not Reno. It's not Sheriff's. It's not NHP. This motorcycle had a license plate of 01, which is one of Governor Sandoval's boys. So this is an important two-wheeled motorcycle officer. And he tries to rattle me. He tries to get me to say or do something that will be actionable, as is the standard operating procedure. I would not give him what he wanted. And so I told him, when you're hiding, you're not protecting or serving, you're fundraising. And when the light changed, I left, right in the middle of him talking. He didn't care for that. He got out in front of me, and at the very next light, there was a red left turn arrow, which of course, with a chirp and a flash of his privilege, he blew through, because they get to do that. And the next day, every speed trap in this community was gone. I searched. I knew where they were. I knew what they were, where to find them, and I went everywhere. Reno, Sparks, NHP, sheriffs, all of them gone. And they haven't been back.
Finally, Shepard saw tangible change from the behavior of the department. His years of waving posters and flipping the bird were finally recognized and heard by the state. Shepard had invoked change, but was far from finished.
At the same time it was encouraging, it also drove home the point that I can do this. So I recorded a 4-minute video, which I sent into Internal Affairs at Reno PD. And as a result of that, Reno Mayor Hillary Sheevy and State Senator Debbie Smith became aware of what I had done. And these two remarkable women worked together to effect a permanent and more broadly embraced change to our community. It's because of what I did, and with the help of these two women, that we have Chief Soto, that we have dozens of new officers, that we do not have that oppressive blanket of speed traps covering our community.
Shepard's diligence had finally paid off in systemic change. Now he refuses to curb his diligence or his activism.
I am the reason why all that happened. And that's why I'm running for Congress, because I now see that I can affect change. I can make a difference. And I've seen with these two remarkable women what motivation and a little position of authority can affect upon our communities. If I can bring an entire state's worth of law enforcement to heel, armed with nothing but a laminated sign and the courage of my convictions, imagine what I'm going to accomplish as a congressman when I have the resources of the United States government at my aid.